My name is Anna Tate. I am an attorney and I am also a product expert for family law software. I wanted to get this webinar started with some of the tools that we have to help you as our user base. And one of the tools that you may have forgotten is familylawsoftware.com. So obviously this is a purchasing platform, but you might not have known that there's a lot of resources here for you and your firm. And so on familylawsoftware.com, we consider you to be our pro subscribers. And in the top right-hand corner of familylawsoftware.com, it says pro subscribers. And so here, if you are a desktop user, you can come and download the latest version of Family Law Software. There's guides, there's tutorials, and there's also FAQs and tech support help. Today's training is going to be in cloud family law software. So if you happen to be a desktop user, please hang in there. It's all the same great tools. It just looks a little different and it's obviously cloud-based. If you would like to upgrade to the cloud, we really encourage that you do so because that's where all the cool new stuff is and you don't have to worry about updates. Another cool thing about family law software that is new is this button here. This is live training. We are trying to offer more webinars to you, the users. Obviously, today is all about Ohio. We also have an advanced training that is going to focus on higher level uses of family law software. And so definitely join us for those if you can. We're trying to do these on a monthly basis. And we obviously want your feedback about what you want to learn about family law software. If you have not heard the word, Family Law Software is now a Centerbase company. And so Centerbase is a case management platform and billing system. So if you feel like you have outgrown your Clio or your MyCase or you're done with Leap and you want to try something new, please consider joining our product family. In the chat is my information and our email, and then also some more information about Centerbase. So let's get going. So family law software, to log into family law software, you go to the website, which is pro.flsgo.com. You enter your email and your password. If you forgot it, it's okay. Just click forgot password and you can reset it. Or if this is your first time, click forgot password and click log in. Again, we are using Family Law Software Cloud. And she has recently gotten an update. So she looks a little different. We gave her a bit of a facelift. And so this is now what family law software looks like. And in fact, let me just open a sample file just to make sure that you guys are seeing what Ohio looks like now. I apologize for not preloading this. And John's going to go into this in more detail with you. So two new things that are happening in Ohio is the way that data entry happens. This is what it's going to look like now. Same thing with desktop. If you update, you're going to see all of this as well. And we'll dive into that more deeply. But what I want to show you is File Manager. So again, everything is in the same order. It's all the same great tools. It just looks a little more snazzy. And so File Manager. So previously, cloud users, you did not have a file manager. You have it now. And what's great about File Manager is it's a real file management system. And so my name is Anna. I'm the attorney. And so these are all of my files. And so the way that family law software is still organized is by lawyer. So if you're a paralegal and you're looking for your name, it won't be here. It's only going to be the professionals, the paid professional users. They will see their names here. And so this is Anna's files. These are all of my files. And they're beautifully listed here. You can see that I have 223 files. Obviously, I don't have that many active cases. So now something that you can do is you can archive files. And so that means you just kind of put them away to collect some dust until they come back for enforcement issues. And something that you can do is you can change your professional. So if you have multiple lawyers, it's really easy to switch between lawyers because we still organize cases by lawyers. But what's new is that you can see all of the firm's files together. So if you want to search all of the files from all users, you can do so now. That is a new feature. And the other things that are new is you will see that these are all of my case names when they've been modified, but now you have these action ellipsis, vertical ellipsis here. You can now rename your file. You can look up the history of the file. And so you'll be able to see who touched it and when and what time. So this is great for admins. So if they hadn't used family law software before, they might want to come and check who's doing what. You can still email your file for support purposes or to other professionals. So all of those are nicely tucked away in here. Shared files. So if you did not know, family law software has always allowed you to make a file that your client can enter the data themselves. So that's not new. Your clients have always been able to enter their income expenses for you. What's new now is that files that you are sharing with your clients will now be listed under shared files. And all three of these, I can enter data or my client can enter data because they are unlocked. And so this is great, especially in the beginning of the case. You might enter data, they might enter data, but when you want to lock them out, it's easier than ever before. In this case, this client, Martha, cannot enter any more data. It's done. The file is closed. And so I, as the attorney, can feel confident that the data has been exchanged and I no longer want my client's participation in the file. They can't get in anymore. So if you have been hesitant to share files with your client, hopefully this will help you maybe open your mind back up to it. So we encourage you to do that. And so file manager, let me show you how to make a file. So when you log into family law software, it's going to say, load a file or start a file. And so this is where I was before, and I'll just click it again. So let's go back into file manager. And if I want to start a file, I just click new. So we got a new button and it's new. And by default, it's going to be a new file, meaning the file is just for me and my team and my staff. If you want your client to enter data online themselves, you just have to click register, and you'll know that something is different because we ask for the client's email address only when you register. I encourage you again to test this out. You can use your email, your shopping email that you use, and then you can see the full cycle of beginning a client file with data entry from the client. But right now, let's just focus on new. I'm going to enter data. No one else is going to. And Jamie. So I've got my client. I've got the second party. My state, I would just switch that obviously to Ohio. So this is going to default to where your state is. You won't see Florida on yours. My file name, I can now give it a case name as well. So these are other ways to organize your file. And I click create the new case file. And so it's just that easy. And so by default, we take you into the most popular tool in family law software, which is our child support calculator. And so you obviously don't have to start there. And I'm going to have John come in and take it away. And John is going to show you around a little bit more and give you some Ohio specifics. If you didn't know, John Zoller is an Ohio attorney and he lives in Ohio, and he is our product expert. So John, if you are ready, let me stop sharing my screen.
Yep.
Awesome. All right, go for it, John.
I'm on it. And I'm going to share my screen.
And then we encourage questions in the chat. John and I will both monitor them. And
yeah,
thank you so much.
I really encourage questions as I go along. Hi, everybody. I recognize some of your names. So Anna was in the enter data screen and child support data. It looks exactly like the prior screens. You would probably know that you can do a quick version of a brand new case. And you basically only have 8 or 10 data points to enter before you get the solution, which shows up here on the top bar. if your case is, your clients hired you and they have any complexity at all, you want to use the complete version. And data entry is pretty forthright. The main rule is if the field is yellow, you can type in it. And if it's blue, try not to. It's a really bad idea. So all of these are yellow fields, and these click open and closed. And in this situation, we have Taylor making 25 and Blake making 50, and I'm going to close that. You can put in this detail, employer address and all of that. You can click on the ellipses, which is more information, and you can get very granular about the employment situation. And if you take this to court or to settlement meetings or something, you'd have all this data at your fingertips, and it would work like an information database for your client and the opposing party. I don't tend to do all of that unless the case is really coming to a head and I need to be prepared to know everything. Can't do that, but I try. So, under wages and filing status, I'm sorry, the extrapolation button for incomes over the statutory cap is right here. A lot of people don't realize that there are two mathematical methods for extrapolating above the table cap, and it's the marginal rate, which we recommend, and the average rate, which ends up with a higher number. And here is why we recommend the marginal rate. And I don't need you to read all of this. I just want you to see it, because these little blue question mark bubbles are everywhere in the software. And the more often you click on it, the more confident you're going to feel about using the software, and the more answers you'll get. So click early and often on blue question mark bubbles. In this particular case, the couple doesn't have combined gross income over 336, so it doesn't matter. You'll notice these are blue fields. However, you can click on them and you can change the percentage rate of the marginal rate of extrapolation or the average rate of extrapolation. It's probably a subject for an advanced training, but I want you to know that that's possible. And sometimes that's done just to get a case settled. You know, if somebody says, look, I'll agree to extrapolate, but not by 6%, do 3% more, settled. And so you can use the software to color outside the box, so to speak. So there's wages and filing status. We've got our extrapolator down there. Well, I'm saying extrapolator, I should point out. As you probably all know, overnights are a big deal, and counting them has become a big deal since the new statute went into effect. So we can change this to 183 and 182. What that does is creates a split custody worksheet, and it's basically equal parenting time, right? So this button is checked and it says calculate parenting time deviation for overnights above 90. Well, we've got a pretty small number here after we do this. If I deselect this button, we're not extrapolating over the 10%. Granted, the automatic 10% reduction at 90 nights, we stop at the 10% reduction, which is 775. So all this is doing is telling you what the adjustment would be on a straight line scale. And our math is right here. It's very simple. It's 1% per overnight between 90 and 180 overnights. And we round up to the, we round to 180 rather than 183, just to keep the math really simple. But there's the explanation how and why that button exists and what it does. Again, more information buttons. Another way to calculate overnights is with that little button. If it's equal parenting time, you just put in 17 overnights or 7 out of every 2 weeks, and you've got equal parenting time. I like to illustrate this split custody arrangement because you save your client money, or you save your client's spouse money without costing your spouse anything if you do this, because it creates a split custody worksheet. It creates the presumption that each parent has one more night than half per year with a child, that enables them to both file as head of household. And when they file both as head of household, they pay a lower tax rate. So I think whenever you have 2 or more children and you have equal parenting time, you should always create this legal fiction of 1 extra overnight per year to satisfy the IRS filing requirements for a head of household. Okay, now I'm going to go on to wage-like income. Again, it's pretty straightforward. This is where you put in overtime, commissions, and bonuses for Ohio's child support guideline calculation. One thing that I had trouble with when I first started using the software is, why are bonuses here if they're here? And the reason is that these are previous years, and this bonus is present and future years. So if you know what the parties anticipate getting in bonuses in future years, you put it in here. And it's important to do that, because if you're looking at allocation of after-tax or after-tax and expense income, and you're trying to balance incomes or get a 60-40 split of incomes, and you haven't put the anticipated bonuses in here, you're going to get the wrong answer. So very important, if you anticipate one or both of the parties having bonuses in the future, put it in here, because if it's not here, this average does not carry forward to the future income projections. And I hope everybody understands that. And if there's any questions, please let us know. So I clicked on this little button because it's a question mark bubble, or it's a comment bubble, and you'll notice that it is opaque, whereas these are translucent. That's your visual clue that there's a footnote there. And we just put no bonus for 2020 due to COVID. Actually, that's probably old now. I should fix that. You can make it as an estimated comment. You can do a reminder, which means it's just for you, and you can make it bold. I would encourage you to use footnotes very, very frequently. It is really the way to be an advocate while using software and using the Supreme Court guideline forms. It's you coloring outside the box and telling the court the story behind the numbers, that if you just fill out the form, you aren't doing it, and the court's going to be drawing conclusions that are incorrect. So tell the story using the footnotes, and your client will love it, because they'll realize that you're paying attention to them, and you heard them say, oh, there was no bonus in 2020 because of COVID, or something like that. So you can see the visual clue that you've got a footnote there. Non-taxable items, pretty self-explanatory. If you've got somebody who does Uber driving, you can put Uber driving in here. You can put in a gross and have it non-taxable because they accept cash, or whatever the situation is. Tutoring money, babysitting money, music lesson money, side job money, whatever. You can add whatever you need in here. Non-mean tested derivative benefits for disability or death. There's really a place for everything in the software. So after wage-like income, we have deductions. This is probably the most important screen in the child support guideline set, other than income, because we have to have a healthcare obligor, and this is where you would put that in. And again, remember, it's the gross amount of deductions for health insurance for the employee. That includes the employee, his or herself. It didn't used to be the case under the old statute, but under our current law, you include the total amount that's deducted from the employee's pay. You can put something in for both parents. It does change the guideline number a little bit, but not enough to fuss about. So that's why this is not blue. A lot of software wouldn't let you do that. And a lot of parents object to them getting a deduction and the other person not getting a deduction. So it's a means by which to appease your client as well. Work-related childcare expenses. How much does each parent pay for each child? And this will affect the guideline worksheet and its calculation. In this case, only Kim's daycare is being paid by Taylor. Reese isn't paying anything for If your clients are each paying the same amount, you can put in the same amount. And let's take a look at what happens up here. Nothing. Well, yeah, a little bit, 20 bucks. So you can play around with, well, what if my client pays half? This is assuming that the child support, that the work-related child care is being paid directly to the carrier or the provider, I believe. So you need to explore this and play with different scenarios to make sure that you understand how your numbers in these blocks affect the outcome. We have statutory maximums for children of different ages. That table is right here. I would look at this because if you have a 6-year-old who's about to age into the next bracket, you probably, when you're doing guideline worksheets, should go ahead and use the next lowest cap because otherwise, as soon as you get this worksheet done and signed, there'll be a change in circumstances, probably not at 10%, but it'll still irritate the clients and it'll be inaccurate. It'll make it harder to modify it later if you use the anticipated cap if you're close to that break point. So that's deductions. We've got union dues and other deductions. They don't play a role in our current calculation. That's in case you were calculating under the old statute. Worksheet for deviations. I'm sure you guys use this a lot. We track the statute by factor directly. In this case, we've got extraordinary child care expenses, 300 for each. But you can fit almost anything you think of into one of these deviation factors if you need to. Again, we've got footnotes. Fill it out. Tell the story. Let everybody know why there should be a deviation for this. Factors for extended parent time. This field would be filled in if I had clicked the parenting time extrapolator button, which we repeat right up here for your convenience. And so now we've got, because this is a split custody, they both get a deduction based on their overnights. And it shows up right there in the deviation factors. So you don't even have to calculate it and carry it forward. This is where you put in deviation for cash medical. I don't happen to think this is the best place to put in that number, but you certainly can. I'll show you where I do it. And if you don't deviate cash medical to 0 in your cases, I can't understand why not. Nobody pays attention to it. It's just a source of conflict for people. Well, you didn't pay me the first $29.97 in out-of-pocket expenses, so you owe me, and you just don't want to hear that. And no client, even if they're an accountant or an engineer, is going to keep track of that. So it's best to just deviate cash medical to 0 and have the sharing of uncovered expenses start from $1. I hope I explained that. Because it's a split custody worksheet, we have deviations for both sides. That is the majority of deductions. If you're using the software, again, this should all look very familiar to you. Hopefully you all have clients who have money that you need to fill out in here, interest and dividend, capital gains, rental property, pensions that are in payout status, that sort of thing, assets that are spinning off income. The inflation is happening, and that means that interest rates are going up, and eventually that will mean that interest rates on savings accounts will go up from 0 to something. Don't overlook this. In this case, this pension plan's going to pay $1,200 a month. I guess I don't have a good example here, but the software will automatically carry over. If you fill out, let's say this S&P 500 index, and let's say it's 800,000. You go to more information, and you put in a rate of return. The traditional rate is 5%. That's been reliable since the Second World War. We'll say that the appreciation is worse because of what's happening these days. Here's where you would indicate whether it's separate property of anyone. I'm going to go back, and I believe that should carry forward a annual income figure. It did not. Well, you've got a calculator. You've got that standard field. Well, I've walked into a blind alley. I thought I knew how to show up. The answer is in filling out more of these data fields to get that 5% rate of return. Here, we can just say 3,500. We can just put in the amount if we know it. And now it's, oh, I was in the wrong account, but you see the point. This will carry over to the child support guideline worksheet. I'm going to show you that in a minute because we're almost done. It's important because people have more than one source of income. They may be modest, but it's rarely just their W-2 income. So we're about done. Child support to use. So these last two are really for analytical purposes. For purposes of calculating child support, we're done. We ended up with $325 paid by Blake to Taylor. Notice this, there's a footnote here. What did we say? Oh, okay, that's fascinating. But, you know, judge might want to know. So I'm going to jump ahead to the guideline worksheet. And remember that there's data entry, there's analysis, and there are reports. This is where you do data entry. Try not to do data entry in reports. And now that I've said that, like a good lawyer, I'm going to speak out of the other side of my mouth. Remember, I told you that there's a better place to put in deviation for cash medical. I happen to think it's on the guideline worksheet itself, simply because when you get down to the bottom, it tells you the number. So you can deviate cash medical because the number's right there. And you just do negative 920. Oops. And now cash medical goes to 0. So that nobody has to count and account for the $9.20 per year in out-of-pocket expenses before the sharing of it pursuant to line 17, which in this case is 3565 or 3664, excuse me. So that's the one place in the guideline worksheet where I would encourage you to type, because it's the numbers right there for you. Otherwise, you have to look at it here, go back to the deviation page, back to this page, back and forth until you find it. Okay, I want to talk about a couple other things. Again, we're in reports, we're not in data entry. This is a split custody worksheet, so it might look a little different. Oh, look, there's yellow fields. And what's this? Yellow field for other income. Now, this, I always laugh when I show people this. It's not clear why we have line 6, because if you follow the statutory definition in line 1, there shouldn't be any other income. So it seems to us that it's a line without a purpose. And we think that in the next iteration of the worksheet, it should go away. But there are courts that say, no, you have to put spousal support in here as other income. It should not be on line 1. And we've had certain child support enforcement agencies tell us that that's the fact. I've gone to bat for some family law subscribers on this point and pointed out that if you look at the definition under 311901, it actually specifically says that you include spousal support there. Looks like we have a question. We use other income all the time. Oh, well, I love to know why, Shelley. That's fascinating. It's clearly contemplated in the statute to go in line one income though. It's specific in the statutory language. So again, if you look at, and I can see why CISA wants to see spousal support down here, because these numbers don't make any sense and you don't know how much is which. And CSEA might have a hard time knowing how to apply arrearages if they don't have the data about how much is for which type of support. And that's why we have this hyperlink or this worksheet within the worksheet. And here's another practice tip, and I can't stress this enough. Always print out this worksheet and attach it to your guideline worksheet. If you have anything, any income at all other than W-2 income, because it's a way to lay a trail for those who come after you, for CSEA for enforcement purposes, for subsequent attorneys looking to analyze modifications, to figure out what the heck was going on. Here we've got investment income of 21.7. Well, you know, once Taylor and Blake are separated, one of them is going to blow through those investment monies and not have that kind of income, and the other one's going to keep saving and it's going to go higher, because usually one of them is a spender and one of them is a saver, right? So we know from this how much of these gross income numbers came from investment income or spousal support, or in this case, even union dues. So it's easier to know if there's been a change. And let's just. Okay, a little more help. So print this out and attach it to your guideline worksheet. You'll be, when the client calls you up a year later, you'll be happy you did it, because you'll know where the income came from. But it's also just really an important thing to do for anyone else. There are two other worksheets within the worksheet. One of them is the work-related child care less subsidies worksheet. So we saw this before. It's the same worksheet, but again, how will anyone know if there's been a change in circumstances? Maybe Kim no longer needs work-related child care and this 900 should go away. So again, if there is work-related child care part of the guideline calculation, print this worksheet out and attach it to your child support guideline worksheet. And now we've got more questions. He asked me more. It makes sense to print an entire other worksheet. I don't think you should print the entire other worksheet. I think you should print the worksheets within the worksheet and attach them, because they correlate to your worksheet, your main worksheet. The third worksheet within the worksheet is the deviation worksheet. And again, I mean, leave a paper trail of why. Some courts and some CSEAs require you to exactly identify the amount of a deviation. Well, here it is. You might also remember that CSEA in a subsequent administrative review has the power to carry forward deviations if CSEA can determine the amount or the percentage of the deviation from clear language in the order or the entry. So here's the reason. And this is why you would print this worksheet out. And in this case, if the extraordinary child care costs are 300, you'd do a footnote. You said, you'd say, Kim is disabled. And now you know, and we'll click estimate for fun. So now we've told the story of why there's an additional deviation, and if she's disabled, it's probably going to tell the court even more and say whether it's likely to continue or go up. These parenting times might change. You know, people say they're going to do 50-50, but maybe they don't end up really doing it. So knowing how much the deviation was for that factor, that statutory factor, is important. Leaving this paper trail for CISA or the subsequent lawyers. You probably all get calls from people who say, I didn't like my last divorce. And sometimes I think maybe the feeling is mutual, but you know, you send a message to anybody who looks at this case later, what was going on. And I think that's extremely important, unless obviously the kids are about to all emancipate. So those are the three guidelines, three worksheets within the worksheet for the child support calculation. We've gone a little over halfway, and I'm going to shift gears on you guys unless we have any more questions about child support. Anyone? Okay. So you'll notice this is different. The data entry, excuse me, here, the data entry looks different. We just did child support data. I don't know how many of you used the arrearage calculator, but it got a redo a few months ago. It's a lot easier to use. Anytime I have to use it, the people I give it to are so grateful that we've done the calculation. In the county where I practice predominantly, it is always worth your time to double check their math by doing it yourself to see if the county's calculation agrees with yours. So I encourage you to use this. So this is part of the story, but the rest of the client's story is in the financial affidavits. And these are, by the way, the Supreme Court form numbers. And there is a rule that says that courts must accept these forms for what they are. I recently wrote a letter to a judge who refused to accept the motion for temporary orders because it had too many boxes checked. And the motion, rather than issuing an order saying file a second motion to determine temporary custody, the motion was simply dismissed sua sponte. And that created real problems for the lawyer because the retroactivity of the motion was lost. So I think you want to make sure, even if your court says, well, we don't like those forms. Well, okay, I'm sorry you don't like them, but there's a rule of civil procedure, or maybe it's a rule of superintendents, I can't remember, that says to the county courts in this state, they must accept these affidavits. So we're going to do the data entry for the affidavits. And what we've tried to do by changing this is make it more like you're filling out a form in the data entry process. So you'd already have this filled in. Income and expenses, you're already going to have some of this filled in because you'll have their income from that carries over from the guideline worksheet calculation. So same screen, same information. It all looks familiar, right? But there's more to it than that. You can see we've got header and basic information. To do the income and expense affidavit that satisfies the Supreme Court requirements, we've got to break it out. And I won't spend a ton of time on this. I have a question about separate check each time for some. So if everyone sees the question, does the separate property box need to be checked each time before sending to a client, or is there a way to set it globally? There is no way to set it globally in the property division. So let me jump to that. Well, let's start with real estate. I think I have an example in here. So each asset might have a different story. This real estate may be partly separate because of a premarital asset that was used for the down payment. You'll always enter separate property in a more information button, the ellipse, the green ellipse, and down here in this case you see the separate property, and in this case I put in a specific amount for the separate property. Whether that grows or not is a different question, but the amount of the down payment was $50,000. That was separate property, and we're going to say this was Taylor's. Oops, what did that? Oh, it says Taylor already, that's why. There we go. So Taylor's got 50,000 in separate property. Blake has nothing in this. That's going to stay there until you change it. But you need to do this for each asset. Each asset may have a different reason for it being a separate property. So in financial accounts, you know, one of the big account might have been a partial inheritance. And we'll say it was 500,000. Oh, you'll notice it's blue. So it wants me to go back to the data entry. It wants me to enter it in a previous place. Oh, I see, because I clicked the entire amount as Taylor, so that's why it was blue. Now it's yellow because we're going to say only 500,000 of it. See, I learn the software every time I use it. So now we put in 500,000. So what the software will do is exclude 500,000 from the marital balance sheet and divide the other 300,000 in this account. I hope that's answering your question. You need to put it in for each asset, whether it's separate or not. The presumption is that everything is separate. You can put in the reason, the inheritance. And there's obviously lots more information to be filled out here for that particular asset. Okay, I'm going to go back up to income and expenses because I just want to make sure you see the number of different places. These are all fields that were part of the software before we changed the menu look and feel. So if you use the software, this is all going to be familiar to you, but it gets very, very granular and very, very detailed. So when you go to housing expenses, you've got all these other there are tons and tons of expenses related to housing. I only see 4 of them here. Anyway, there are huge numbers of places to put in expenses. And notice you can do them side by side. I would really encourage you, if you have the time, the bandwidth, and the client that would tolerate it, I would encourage you to take the data from the other party's affidavit of income and expenses and enter it also. And I'll explain why in a few minutes, but it's very, very helpful to see, when you see it side by side, the disparity in the alleged spending. And it'll jump out at you as to why the numbers are wonky. You don't have to do that. You can just do one or the other. There, now we just have Blake's asset or Blake's expenses. Now we're back to both. So this is a lot of work. Anna talked about registering a client. I encourage you to do that. I used to only do it for a certain band of socioeconomic class of people who I thought would have the data and the computer acumen to do it themselves. I changed my mind. I send it to all my clients. The worst thing that happens is I get garbage and I realize the client doesn't know any of this stuff. And we've all had that client. But a lot of times it tells you a lot about what your client knows and what they don't know. And if it's any good, it saves you time and them money, and they appreciate that. So I encourage you to register clients and have them do the major, the beginning work on these affidavits. And so when you log in, some of this stuff will already be there for you. Okay, assets and debts. I think I showed that to you already. You can show fields for separate property. You can put valuation dates. You can have a default that it's 50-50 and so forth. Don't forget to look at these. Show fields for financial affidavit, which is a court form, versus a financial plan, which is this is the story of this family's finances, not necessarily an adversarially depicted data set. Okay. You go through again, this is just like the software that you've been using. It's the same they're in the same order even, but you're filling out the affidavit forms as well. If you don't know, the software will calculate the present value of pensions for you if you have the right data, or you can just fill in the data from an outside valuation company. Parenting, the 3109 affidavit, parenting proceeding information affidavit. Again, you know, if you send this to your client and they fill it out, hallelujah, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of detail, and if they're not going to fill it out, then they're going to pay you or your paralegal to fill it out. There it all is. Same with health insurance order. You know, it's very handy to go look in FLS when you're going to the journal department to get approval for your final work product, and you realize, oh, thank God I did both of them. And even though I represent Blake, I did Taylor's too, just so that we wouldn't have a problem when we were at the end of the case. Temporary order, I mentioned this earlier. One judge didn't want to see more than one of these boxes checked on any particular motion. And because both parenting rights, parenting time, and child support were clicked, the motion was thrown out. And I had to go to bat for that lawyer and say, hey, judge, you're required to take this form. I think the solution would be, for court tracking purposes, is to just file it 3 times. And so they can put a motion number on each one of these requests for relief. As our judges are ordered to go through this for data entry. So I think that the software will guide the client through the order of data entry. I haven't heard that people jump around a lot, but if they have, for example, they have the family checkbook and they did all of the bill paying, I'd start there with expenses, because that's the information they have at hand, and it will be easy. You know, it's a lot of information. Clients really burn out on it. You've got to counsel them to take it easy, one thing at a time, get one section done and put it down and come back to it. They're always going to miss something. So if they jump around, you know, they're going to miss something. If they don't jump around, they're going to go, oh, I don't know that, but I'll go look it up. And then they forget to go look it up. So I've never gotten a data set from a client that was ready to be filed as I received it. It's always going to require your professional input and guidance and proofreading. And frankly, what I do, I mean, I'll show you. I'll click on a report. I'll say, I want to do the financial affidavits, and I want to see the affidavit of income and expenses. I'll PDF it. This way, you know, you're double checking the work product, seeing what it looks like. I'll look at this and I'll look for blanks, and I will go through literally with a highlighter. You know, like I'd highlight phone number and email address, and I just keep going until I'd gone through the whole thing, looking for the data that I think is essential that needs to be put in. I mean, I've had judges tell me that on the disability benefits, you need to put a 0 so that we know that you considered it. Leaving it blank isn't isn't filling out the form properly. So I go through these things and I fill them out with what I know and what the client knows, and then I put in blanks and I highlight it and I say, come on, you have a telephone, you've got to put in a number here. And then I'll send it back to them and ask them to fill in, give me the data for all the highlighted blanks. And that's worked pretty well to take care of this question of them jumping around and missing things. You know, they become a partner in their own case and their own representation. And they need to be at least as concerned about their case as you are, or they're probably not a very good client. Ooh, a little editorial comment from Jones on there. I don't know that I need to go through any more affidavit data entry things. I think you guys probably get it. If not, speak up in the chat. if there's something you want me to go over specifically. We've got about 10 more minutes left, and I want to show you a few more things and leave a little bit of time for questions at the end. These blanks are limited in space. You can make them bigger by clicking here and typing in more of the story. Pension plans, I think I already showed you, you can do this work with defined benefit plans. If your client can get you the date they started in the plan, the date of retirement, the birth dates, and the relevant data. I can't show you what that looks like as the client sees it because I've created this data, but you can look at it yourself if your client has sent it to you. And Tiffany, you're concerned about them not realizing that they miss things. This might be a good place for you to take a look at it, and you'll see what the client sees. Okay, so analysis, again, these are our tools. The first one is support impact. This is always going to take you, it's the first one because it tells you where you end up on the percent of combined gross income. We've got expenses in here now, and boy, Blake likes to live well. And Blake lives at $642 underwater per month. We could probably find a place in here to cut that down so this ends up being zero, but holy cow, $2,000 a month in net deficit is a lot, and that tells us that this probably is an inadequate outcome for Taylor. And these two numbers, these child support and spousal support numbers, maybe need to be adjusted, maybe simply by deselecting the overnight extrapolator button. You can see a little bit more of the information here. That's what used to be known as a thin plan report. That's a 4-letter word as far as I'm concerned, so I don't spend any time on it. And we have pretty pictures down here. So this is the first shot at what the data you've put in looks like from an income and expense standpoint. To balance incomes, you go here, and now you can go, well, if we wanted this to get to be 55-45, it would be $4,200. And if you're in certain counties in Ohio that just default to 50-50, no matter what the facts are, then you're going to put in 50-50, and you'll know that it's 3276, and you'll know why. And you'll notice it did change the child support number it went, well, this was a bad example, but it does change the child support number to get this equalization. It used to be our software was able to do crossing support obligations. We can do that now. So if you have one party paying child support to the other party, but that party's paying spousal support to the child support obligor, we can still balance incomes with that situation. So I think that is a really cool feature, and it comes up more often than you think. And you can play around with that right here. You can do spousal only, and really it's a combination, just combines these because there's no tax effect anymore. Meet recipient need, it's what it sounds like. If it would only need to be 1647 to get spousal support to get Taylor to break even every month. Right now it's a 4159. Well, that's with a $90,000 budget. So let's say Taylor's saying 9,820. That comes out to 117,840, I think. And if we do that, now we've got a break even at 0. So, and that tells you that 3,900 would be needed to break even if Blake's going to do that for Taylor. And it would be a 54-46 split, which is probably higher than most outcomes, but not so far that it's outside the realm of possibility. Okay, so this is a tool that's used often. I get a lot of calls about it. I think that the more you use this, the more adroit you'll become with it, and the more confidence you'll have. And it's really easy to run different scenarios to double check yourself and make sure you're figuring things out. If you didn't know it, spousal support can always be determined on a cash present value basis if you have the beginning date, the end date, and the amount per month. The software will always be calculating the present value of spousal support. And that's for obviously a buyout situation. A lot of people don't want to pay spousal support on a monthly basis, but they'll give up more than half of their 401k plan to buy out that amount. And this is where you can find that. Interest rates on the rate of return for investments. This is, again, something we base it on a 20-year treasury bond. That, if we go into a recession and inflation continues, those numbers might change a little bit, but they haven't yet. So these are our analysis tools. I don't have time to go through all of them. We've just got a few minutes left. Two analysis tools for property. One is divide the property. Well, hey, let's say that this is 50-50. And let's say that this is 50-50. Now you can't split a car and you can't split a consulting business. Oh, we didn't put anything here. So now 50-50. Let's go. We've still got some unaddressed assets. I don't see it. It must be the Liberty Mutual. So yeah, well, there's one that hasn't been allocated, but you can see we've got after-tax and pre-tax assets, and it's telling you how they were divided for each class of assets. And then there's the debt allocation, and obviously looks like Taylor's saddled with more of the debt than Blake, and that's because of the car loan, but Blake's got a student loan, and so that's the reason that those are off from 50-50, but it's telling you how much needs to change hands in order to hit a 50-50 division. Be careful with this because, well, in this example, you would change that, you would make changes that amount to $28,219 in after-tax assets from debt and from other assets, not from retirement, because you've already equalized retirement. So it makes a difference where you make up this 28,000, and these percentages tell you that. Okay, my favorite, well, there's a lot more here in dividing property you can do on an after-tax basis. I mean, this is also the subject of an advanced seminar, but boy, you really have to be aware of the tax consequences of dividing assets that have not yet been taxed. And that can be a retirement account, but it can also be a securities account that has had huge gains. Going to reports, we've talked about the child support guideline worksheet. Court forms are the application, the Title 40 services application. Form 1 is a wage withholding order. It's a Department of Job and Family Services form. It's used very widely in Central Ohio. Child support affidavit, Rule 23. This is a great form, and there's no reason that it shouldn't be used more often. So take a look at that. These are form fillable PDFs. Financial affidavits we talk about. We have some other forms. We're open to you guys suggesting more forms. We want to meet your needs. So if you have a form you think that more than 50 lawyers would want to use in more than one county in Ohio, let us know about it, and we will see about getting it added to the software for you. This is a JFS form as well, and I don't remember who or what county asked us to add it, but this is an example of when that happened. Okay, where is, oh, I know. So in reports for lawyers, oh, here it is right here, budget report. If you don't use a budget report, please start. It's the best explanation of income and expenses a court could get every magistrate that's ever gotten it from me loves it. It's a side by side of the whole income and expense picture for the entire family. And you scroll down and you can compare things and see who's spending what and why these numbers are so different, what their tax situation is like. And now we're here, and again, Taylor is 1,300 in the hole, and Blake is 990. And that's going to tell the magistrate something about what those budget numbers are, how much they need to live their expenses. And, you know, Blake's is going to be chopped up and Taylor's might be also, but most magistrates, if there's enough money, are going to try and get these two numbers to be zero. Here's an example of the footnotes printing, and you can see how useful that will be. So I print this out. I give it to magistrates at temporary support hearings. I give it to judges in opening statement. I do it again at closing arguments to say this is what the evidence has shown. I use this when, you know, if Blake's lawyer told me that this is not a spousal support case, I would remove spousal support from this worksheet. I would run it with no spousal support at all. Take out that $2,000. Now we know this number is going to be negative 3,000 and this number is going to be a positive 2,000. And I'm going to hand that to the court and say, this is what Blake and his lawyer think should happen in this case. And Your Honor, I don't think there's any case law that would support that disparity of income and an ultimate outcome of a case. So it's a good way to illustrate the unreasonableness of the other side. A good way to use the software tool. I started to show you more reports and I'm out of time, but I just want you to know they're there. There's 4 lawyers, there's 4 planners, there's 4 graphs. For lawyers, if you need to print the footnotes, they're down here. And you can click on that and just do a PDF of this to attach it to whatever you want if the form you're printing doesn't have the footnotes available. I think I'm out of time. I appreciate everybody hanging in there and listening to this. And I see that we've got a bunch of people. So thank you. If you have any questions, I can stick around a while. And if not, look for the next one of these. They'll be happening with regularity and there'll be email notices. Happy holiday.
Thanks, John. It looks like we addressed all of the questions, I believe. So if anybody feels like you still have a question or something really specific to your case, please reach out to us directly. The email is in the chat. It is support@familylawsoftware.com. It's the best way to reach out to us because if it's a tech issue, we're going to get you a techie. If it's a tax issue, we're going to get you a tax person. And if it's real Ohio specific, we're going to call John to help. So thank you, everybody, for coming in. And thank you for being subscribers. Have a great night.
Thank you, Anna. Bye-bye.